So now that we got two bodies, there's one kind of cool thing you can do. You can go over here to modify, and you can choose move, which also the hotkey for that is M, so that's probably what I'll be hitting. As well as if you right click over here, you can just choose move. And with move selected, there's a couple different options. You can move a component, a body, or a sketch object. So I'm going to leave this on bodies here, so I can just click this body here, and you can go ahead and move this body. So I can move this body up and down, or oops, let's go ahead and hit M and select that body again. You can go ahead and rotate this body. Now if you want to rotate it from a different axis, what you would need to do is, let's go ahead and change this back to 0 degrees. And let's go ahead and set our pivot. So I'm going to hit set pivot, and I'm going to go down here holding down shift and middle mouse to the bottom here. Now it's going to want to, I believe, probably set a pivot somewhere on this object that's kind of in the way. If I want to get this object out of the way, I got to go over here to my bodies and turn off that little light bulb under box. And now I can go to the bottom here, and I can set a pivot right smack dab in the middle of this bottom face. And then once I'm done setting my pivot, I need to make sure I go over here and click this done. And now I can move from this point. I can, looks like I can, yeah, so I can rotate from this point, and I can move from this point. Now I can't scale from this point. A scale is a little bit different under here, modify scale. We're going to get into later. Well, let's go ahead and get into it now. So we've done move, and let's hit M to go back into move. I'm going to select this body. You can set your pivot if you want to. Now you're also going to notice in between you have these move options. These will just move it along a plane. So if I want to move it along this bottom plane here and kind of constrict it to that plane, you can click that. But if you want to scale something, you have to go to modify and click scale. So now with scale selection, you have to tell it what entity do you want to scale. We're going to scale this new object here. And you're going to need to scale it from a point. Now it automatically selects one point for you. If you want to set your own point, you need to go over here to the point selection and click this X, and that'll say point, no selection. Now you need to select another point. Now unfortunately, this isn't going to have a point that's going to make a whole lot of sense for us to click on. That's basically the only point. So now you can scale from this point, and of course it's set to uniform. If you set it to non-uniform, then you can scale across any of these axes, like so. Now let's go ahead and cancel that. If you did want to scale from a certain point, we're going to get into a little bit of construction here. So what I'm going to do is hide this original body. So it's, this box body, so it's out of the way. And let's go ahead and set a point that we want to scale from. So when we do a set pivot for scaling, uniform scaling, we can go ahead and scale from that point. So because right now we don't have any real useful points on this object. So I'm going to go to here to construct, and we're going to go all the way down here and do point at the center of a sphere or a circle. So if we click point, construct a point, and I click this bottom one, it's going to put a point right there smack dab in the middle. So that's done a couple things. That's given us a construction folder right here. So if we click this open, you're going to see, oh, we have a point construction here. Now if I turn this light bulb off, it's going to get rid of that point, and if I turn off all of the construction stuff, it's going to turn that all off. So just be aware that as you do certain things, it's going to add sketch folder, construction folder, bodies folder, and those will kind of be more, I'll explain those as we kind of go through and they start popping up. So we've added a construction point here. I'm going to go back to my body, and so let's go back to, well, let's go ahead and turn our box back on, because I think we should be able to select through here. So we'll go back to modify, and we'll go back to scale, select our entity. We don't want that point, they auto select, so I'm going to click that X, and then with point here, I'm going to go back down here to the bottom, and I can just select this point here. And now what I can do, since it's set on uniform, I can scale from that point. Or what I can do is, let's go ahead and right click, repeat scale, select that entity, and select that point again. I can also do a non-uniform. So now from that point, I can actually scale this up like so. So a little bit of construction, a little bit of scaling, a little bit of moving, playing with a couple of different separate bodies here. And one thing I probably should have mentioned is I have under my camera here, so here's our display settings here. If you want to change your visual style, you can just go to shaded mode, and that'll just kind of be shaded with no lines here. And then if you go to shaded with hidden edges, you can see through the object, and that way you can kind of see if you go to the side here, and if you go to this little view cube, you can go to the front here, you can go to the side. So as you're placing objects and sketches, you can kind of see through and get a little bit better of idea of where things are placed. And then if we go over here to visual style, shaded with visible edges, this is the default. So it's shaded mode, and everything that's visible to you from this camera view is going to show up. You can also go in here to wireframe with hidden edges, all this good stuff here. So you can change it to those modes as well. And also under camera here, let's go back to shaded with visible edges. Under camera here, I have perspective with Ortho Faces, so you can have orthographic, and that'll just keep you in orthographic mode. And basically, that just means, you have your side orthographic, front orthographic, and then you have a 3/4 orthographic, and you're going to see it's not really in perspective here. If you go to camera and turn on perspective, it's just in perspective mode. And then when you go to the right, you're going to see it's still kind of in perspective mode. So the best of both worlds, I think, is to go to perspective with Ortho Faces. So that way, when you're in a perspective view, it's in perspective, and you can kind of evaluate your object like that. But as soon as you go to one of these, like right, back, top, and bottom, it'll snap to an ortho face, and then you can go in here and make really, really clean, straight cuts. So now if you'll remember back when we created this original cylinder, we created a hole just by cutting in another cylinder. Another thing you can do is we bring this body tube back, and I'm just going to right click or double click this and name it cylinder here. Another thing you can do is go to modify, and you can do not modify, create. And you select create hole, and the hotkey for that is H. Now it's going to ask for a face point, so you're going to go ahead and select that face here. And by default, it's going to put that hole wherever you clicked. If you wanted to put that in the middle, just grab this little icon right here and just go until it snaps onto that middle face point here. And then you can select these arrows here to set the diameter. And right now it's set to 30. If you zoom in, by the way, it'll actually give you a little bit more control over how little those increments are that it's snapping to. And if you zoom out, it's going to be bigger and bigger increments. So that's just a way to kind of control the fidelity of your snapping. Or if you just want to type in something like 35, you can do that as well. Let's actually change that to like 20. Okay, so here's our 20 hole. Now if you look at the bottom of that hole, you're going to see it kind of goes to a cone. That is your tip angle. If you change this to 180, that'll go ahead and flatten that out, as well as distance. So distance you can type in here, or I'm sorry, depth. And you can choose, I want it to be 36 millimeters or a really shallow hole. If you wanted to go all the way through to the other side of your body, you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and hide our original box here. And if I just click and drag, it'll go all the way through and just make a hole all the way through the object. A safer way to do this would actually be to change your extents to 2. And then you just click this bottom plane, and that'll go ahead and snap it to this bottom plane. Now the cool thing about doing extents is that if you ever change where this bottom plane is, it'll always snap that hole to it. So what does that mean? Let's go ahead and click OK. So we've made a hole through that mesh. Now let's say if I go and I right click and do a press pull on this face, then I push, that hole is always going to stay with it because we've told it, hey, when you cut that hole, do that hole operation, go ahead and make sure that hole always ends up on that face. And now that I actually said that, that might not be true in this case because I'm doing a push-pull, so that might not be the case. However, I do know this is the case. If I go to my history here, you're going to see I've got this hole operation that I've made. And if I keep rolling back, you're going to see, let's go and turn our box back on. You can see if you roll over here, it's got the scale that we did, it's got the point we created, it's got the cylinder we created, and then on our original box, the chamfers and stuff we've done. So you can actually roll your history back through and kind of see everything being created as you're doing it, as well as if we go back and say, okay, the cylinder we created, I can right-click this and do Edit Feature, and it'll roll us back into history of when we created this cylinder. And if you wanted to, what you could do is, it's only got a few options here. You can actually just make this taller or shorter. But when you go ahead and make this change, hit OK, everything, all the operations you've done past that point will go ahead and update, and you're going to see that hole is cut through here all the way through to the bottom because you've told the hole to go ahead and cut through and always end up to the bottom extent of that cylinder. So we've got our two objects here, and if we go in here to modify, we can go ahead and make some changes. So I can go to chamfer here. Now if I chamfer this edge, it'll go ahead and we have the chamfer type set to equal distance. So as I pull this in, it's just going to be an equal distant with 3 millimeters as the distance we're choosing. Now what you can do is go in here and do two distances and distance and angle. So if you do two distances, what that's going to allow you to do is go ahead and change this here as well as this distance here. So you can kind of fine tune if you want a shallow or a deep chamfer. As well as if you go down here to distance and angle, that'll give you a constant distance, and then you can change the angle of it here. So a couple different ways you can modify your chamfers.